Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're going to be exploring this book called Foolish Prayers, Fabulous Answers.
Oh, interesting.
It's a collection of stories about people who, well, they prayed and then something pretty amazing happened, like maybe even miracles.
Okay, yeah. I'm intrigued. What kind of stuff are we talking about here?
Well, the book frames these stories, these prayers, as foolish. Like the requests people made, they seemed impossible. And then they got these fabulous answers.
So what are the limits of prayer? Can you really ask for anything, no matter how crazy it seems?
Exactly. That's what makes these stories so fascinating.
Right.
The first one that caught my eye was about this guy, Stan Chin.
Okay.
So he got diagnosed with cancer. And, well, the prognosis wasn't good. But his roommate, who was a pastor, he really prayed hard for Stan to get better.
That's powerful. I've heard stories about how important faith and support can be when you're going through tough times.
Right. And the thing is, Stan really believed that God could heal him. Then the church elders, they came and prayed for him too, and they anointed him with oil. And then, well, Stan's health just started improving like crazy. And get this, the x-rays, they showed that the cancer, like the area where it was gone.
Wow. There's actually a lot of research these days about the mind-body connection and how positive emotions can impact our physical well-being.
Yeah, it makes you think, like, could Stan's faith and all that support have actually contributed to his recovery?
It's definitely a question worth exploring. There's a lot we still don't know about the power of belief.
Absolutely. Another story that I found really interesting is about this pastor, Pastor Ashkenaz. He was called to the bedside of this church elder, and the guy was, well, basically on the verge of death.
Oh, wow.
But before Pastor Ashkenaz started praying, he asked the man a really profound question. He said, "Why do you want to live?" But he wasn't asking about material things. He was asking about the man's deeper desires, his purpose.
That's a really good question. It makes you think about what truly matters in life. What did the elder say?
He was really touched by the question. And he talked about wanting to reconcile with people, to make things right before he...
Yeah.
Anyway, the pastor prayed for him, anointed him with oil, and, well, the man made a full recovery. His doctor was completely shocked he'd come to sign the death certificate.
It seems like that question and the act of prayer maybe helped him tap into something deeper, something that sparked his will to live.
Yeah, maybe it aligned him with a higher purpose. It makes you think about our own motivations, right? Are we praying for what we truly want, or just for superficial things?
That's a powerful insight. It's easy to get caught up in the day-to-day and lose sight of what really matters.
Totally. Okay, so let's move on to a different kind of story. This one's about Joe Ashkenaz, and, well, he went through a lot. I mean, we're talking a whole series of misfortunes.
Oh, no. What happened?
First, he lost all his profits from his turkey farm. Some restaurant owner passed away before paying him. Then, get this, his entire flock of chickens got stolen.
Oh, my gosh.
And then both of his horses died, like in separate accidents. One ran away, and the other was struck by lightning.
What? That's awful.
And then, on top of all that, he got evicted from his farm. It's like everything was just falling apart.
That sounds incredibly difficult. It would be easy to lose faith in those circumstances.
Right. But here's the thing. Through it all, Joe's faith never wavered. He actually saw these challenges as tests from God, opportunities to deepen his connection with the divine.
Wow. That's an incredible perspective. He didn't just give up or blame God for his problems. He used those experiences to strengthen his faith.
And he kept searching for solutions, too. So after he lost his farm, the Baptist church offered him a position as a pastor, which came with housing. It was a completely different path, but it provided for his needs.
That's amazing. It shows that even in the midst of hardship, there can be unexpected blessings and opportunities.
And he was a good preacher, too. He ended up leading a lot of people to join the Adventist church.
It seems like his trials ultimately led him to a deeper purpose and a greater impact.
Yeah, exactly. And as if all that wasn't enough, he later suffered a serious knee injury. He refused surgery and just prayed for healing. And guess what? He woke up the next morning and his knee was completely healed.
That's incredible. There are so many stories about the power of prayer for healing.
I know, right? And later on, he even had this dream where an angel confirmed his calling to spread God's message.
It sounds like he fully embraced his purpose, even after facing so much adversity.
He really did. His story makes you think, how could we reframe our own struggles? Instead of seeing them as roadblocks, maybe they're stepping stones to something greater.
That's such a powerful way to think about it. It's a reminder that even in the midst of difficulty, there might be a bigger plan unfolding.
Now, this book, it's filled with stories like this, each with its own unique lesson. For example, there's this one about a woman who prayed for protection from an attacker and ended up being led to safety through a series of seemingly coincidental events.
Wow, that's incredible. It's like her prayer activated a chain of events that ultimately saved her life.
Exactly. And then there's another story about a pastor's wife who prayed for the perfect house in a new city. She found it through a chance encounter with a realtor who just happened to have the listing for exactly what she'd been praying for.
It sounds like her prayer opened her up to receiving the answer in an unexpected way. Sometimes we just need to trust that the universe is working in our favor, even when we can't see how.
I love that. And then there's this other woman who was struggling with a heart condition. She prayed for relief during a flight, and after initially needing medical attention, she experienced a spontaneous recovery.
It's like her prayer tapped into a source of healing beyond what we can fully understand.
Yeah, it makes you think about the power of faith and belief to create positive change in our lives.
Absolutely. All of these stories seem to point to this recurring theme of ordinary prayers leading to extraordinary outcomes. And what's so inspiring is that it wasn't just saints or prophets who experienced these miracles, it was everyday people facing real-life challenges.
Right, it seems like they tapped into a universal force that responds to heartfelt intentions, regardless of who we are or what we've done. One story that really resonated with me was about a woman named Elaine. She was in a really difficult situation, involved with a married doctor, and she was trying to break free from this unhealthy cycle.
Oh, wow, that sounds challenging.
It was. She turned to prayer for strength and guidance, and she also sought support from her church community. They helped her process her feelings and make some tough choices.
It sounds like she realized she couldn't do it alone. Sometimes we need to reach out for help and support to navigate those really difficult situations.
Absolutely. She ended up moving to a different state to get away from this doctor, and it was a huge step in her healing process.
It seems like her prayer, combined with her own efforts and the support of her community, helped her find the strength to break free from a destructive pattern.
Yeah, and it wasn't easy, but it shows how prayer can empower us to make positive changes in our lives. It's not always about a quick fix, but about a journey of transformation.
It reminds us that sometimes the answers to our prayers involve taking action, making difficult choices, and seeking support from others.
Now, speaking of difficult choices, there's this other story about a church deacon named Jim Crawley. This guy was known for being super judgmental, always pointing out other people's flaws. But the pastor, he had this strange dream where he saw Jim secretly smoking, even though Jim was always preaching against it.
Oh, wow, that's interesting. It seems like this dream was trying to reveal something deeper about Jim's character.
Exactly. And the craziest thing is, the dream turned out to be true. When the pastor confronted Jim about it, he admitted that he'd been smoking in secret for 40 years.
That's a powerful example of how sometimes our outward appearances don't match our inner struggles. It's a reminder not to judge others so harshly, as we never truly know what battles they're facing.
Yeah, and it also shows how important it is to be honest with ourselves. We all have flaws and weaknesses, and pretending to be perfect doesn't help anyone.
It's about recognizing that we are all works in progress and that growth involves acknowledging our shortcomings and seeking forgiveness.
And forgiveness is a powerful thing. It can liberate us from the burden of guilt and shame, allowing us to move forward on our spiritual path with a lighter heart.
It's about extending that same grace to ourselves that we hope to receive from others.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Okay, so one last story before we wrap up this part of our deep dive. It's about a young boy named Sonny Fox, and his story is all about the power of childlike faith.
Oh, I love stories about kids and their unwavering belief. They have such a pure and innocent approach to prayer.
Right. So Sonny, he prayed for a dog, and he was so sure that Jesus would answer his prayer. He even told his family, Jesus promised me a dog.
Ah, that's adorable. Kids just have this incredible ability to believe, without a doubt.
And you know what? He did get a dog. But that's not even the most amazing part. Later on, his father got really sick, like critically ill. And Sonny, he prayed with that same unwavering faith for his dad to get better.
Oh, wow. What happened?
The doctors actually pronounced his dad dead. But then something incredible happened. His dad started breathing again, and he made a full recovery.
That's incredible. It's like Sonny's pure faith created a miracle. It makes you wonder, what if we approached prayer with that same level of trust and expectation?
Exactly. What if we could tap into that childlike wonder and belief that anything is possible?
It's a beautiful reminder that sometimes the simplest prayers offered with a pure heart can move mountains.
Well said. So we were just talking about the power of childlike faith.
Yeah.
And it makes me think about this other story about Jean. She was really devout, and she really wanted to experience speaking in tongues, like she'd heard about other people doing.
Yeah.
She prayed for it a lot, even had a friend pray for her, but, well, it didn't happen. Not the way she expected, anyway.
Interesting. So what happened? Did she, give up on it?
Not exactly. It's funny, even though that specific thing didn't happen, she started noticing all these other prayers being answered in her life, like really remarkable things.
Oh, like what?
Well, her son, he got accepted into this boarding school after initially being rejected. And then she had this plan to take in foster children, right?
Mm.
And, well, she found the perfect house for it, like it was just meant to be.
Wow. It's like her desire for that one specific spiritual gift opened her up to receiving blessings in other areas of her life.
Yeah, like maybe it shifted something within her, made her more receptive to, God's grace working in different ways.
Makes you think, doesn't it? We might have our own ideas about how things should go, how our prayers should be answered, but maybe sometimes the universe or God has a different plan.
Mm-hmm. It's a good reminder to stay open to possibilities, to trust that things might work out in ways we don't expect.
Definitely. Speaking of unexpected, there's this story that really got to me about this family driving home late one night.
Oh, yeah, I remember this one. It was Bill and Arlene Thomas
Yeah.
with their kids in the car.
Yeah. So they're driving home from visiting some friends, and suddenly there's this man standing in the middle of the road pointing a gun at their car.
I can't even imagine. What do they do?
It's amazing, actually. Like, in that split second, every single one of them, just started reciting Psalm 34.7 out loud, the one about the angel of the Lord protecting those who fear him.
Oh, wow. It's like their faith just kicked in instinctively.
Right. And the gunman, he keeps pointing the gun at them, but Bill, he manages to swerve the car and get them out of there. They escaped unharmed.
It's like their prayer created a shield, protected them from harm.
Yeah. It makes you think about prayer not just as asking for things, but as aligning ourselves with a higher power, inviting that protection into our lives.
Mm-hmm. Like tapping into a force that's bigger than ourselves, that can guide us and protect us, even in dangerous situations.
Exactly. Okay, so let's switch gears a bit. There's this story about Ada Green and her worries about taxes.
Oh, yeah, I remember this one. She was a faithful tithe payer,
Yeah.
right? Always giving 10% of her income to the church.
Right. And she was worried about a potential audit from the state tax board. Like, would she have to justify her charitable contributions to the government?
Mm-hmm. It was a real concern for her. But she had this incredible trust in God's provision. She believed that if she stayed faithful in her giving, God would take care of her.
And what did she do? Did she try to, hide her contributions or something?
No.
Mm.
She prayed. She specifically prayed for the tax man to drop the investigation.
What happened?
Well, as she was praying, the tax man decided to close her case, just like that. No further scrutiny. It was like her prayer was answered in real time.
Wow, that's pretty amazing. It speaks to the idea that faith isn't just about believing, it's about acting on that belief, even when things seem uncertain.
Exactly. She trusted that a higher power was at work, even when facing this financial challenge.
Okay, so shifting gears again, there are some really heartwarming stories in this book about everyday needs being met through prayer, like the one about Pat.
Oh, yeah, Pat. She prayed for shoes, right?
Yes, her old shoes were worn out, and she had trouble finding ones that fit properly. It might seem like a small thing, but it was important to her.
And she didn't just pray for any shoes. She prayed for shoes that would fit her well.
And guess what? A friend of hers, who was known for finding great deals, suddenly felt inspired to send Pat a pair of shoes she'd found, and they fit perfectly.
It's like her prayer worked through that friend, Like it activated that connection and led to her need being met.
Yeah, it's a beautiful example of how prayer can operate through ordinary channels, through the kindness of others.
And it wasn't just the shoes. There was another time when Pat prayed for vegetables because they literally had nothing for dinner.
What happened? Did vegetables magically appear on her doorstep?
Not quite, but almost. About an hour after she prayed, a couple from her church showed up at her door with a box of fresh produce from their garden. It was like they were divinely inspired to share their abundance.
It's a reminder that we're all connected in ways we might not always realize. And sometimes our prayers can inspire others to act in ways that meet our needs.
Mm-hmm. It's a beautiful web of interconnectedness, and prayer seems to activate those connections in really unexpected ways.
Okay, so there's another story about Pat, this time with her husband, Sid. They were trying to sell their house, but they just couldn't find a buyer.
Yeah, I remember that one. And the house was a mess, right? Like cluttered and disorganized.
Exactly. But just when they were about to give up, a buyer appeared. And get this, he didn't even mind the mess. He saw the potential of the house and made an offer.
It's like their prayers were answered in the most unexpected way.
It's a reminder that sometimes we need to surrender control and trust that things will work out even when they seem chaotic or uncertain.
Mm-hmm. Surrender and trust. Those are powerful concepts, especially when it comes to prayer.
Okay, so shifting gears again, there's this really inspiring story about the Clark family. They were farmers, and a big hailstorm was threatening to destroy their crops. Their young son, Ernest, remembered a Bible verse about God protecting his people, and he encouraged his family to pray for protection.
Oh, wow, so they prayed together.
Yes. And incredibly, the storm changed direction, sparing their fields from any damage.
It's a powerful example of how prayer can be a collective force, a shared intention that can bring about remarkable results.
It's also amazing to see how Ernest, even at a young age, understood the power of prayer and trusted in God's promises, and his faith stayed with him as he grew up. Years later, he became a pastor, and he prayed for a second car for his family.
Did he get it?
He did. It's like those early experiences with prayer shaped his worldview and taught him to rely on a power greater than himself.
It's a beautiful example of how faith can blossom from those early seeds planted in childhood. And his story didn't stop there. He went on to experience so many other incredible things.
Like what?
He witnessed miraculous healings, received divine guidance in his ministry, and even escaped a potentially fatal car accident.
Oh, wow. Tell me about the car accident.
Well, he was driving along this narrow mountain road when the car in front of him swerved erratically, forcing him off the road. He was heading straight for a steep drop-off.
Oh my gosh. That sounds terrifying.
It was a life-or-death situation. But in that moment of crisis, he cried out to God for help. And as he did, a shoulder miraculously appeared on the side of the road, just wide enough for him to pull over to safety.
That's incredible. It's like his prayer created a path to safety out of nowhere.
Yeah, it's a powerful reminder that even when things seem hopeless, there's always the possibility of divine intervention.
And Ernest's story didn't end there. He later witnessed the miraculous healing of a critically ill 75-year-old woman. He experienced God's provision when his family was struggling financially, and he even saw a tornado lift off the ground, sparing an encampment where he was working.
Wow, that's a lot of miracles. It seems like his faith was constantly being tested and strengthened through these experiences.
Absolutely. And, you know, one of the most profound themes that emerges from these stories is that sometimes the most powerful answers to our prayers aren't external events, but internal transformations.
Like changes within ourselves.
Exactly. There's this story about a woman named Sue who was struggling with bitterness and resentment towards God because of all the problems she was facing.
I remember that one. She felt like God wasn't listening to her prayers or that he was somehow responsible for her suffering.
Right. And she had this conversation with the pastor where he explained that God's love is most clearly seen through Jesus' sacrifice and that our trials are opportunities for spiritual growth.
He reminded her that God has given us free will, so we can choose to turn towards him or away from him. We can choose love or fear, faith or doubt.
He emphasized that true happiness and peace come not from demanding that God change our circumstances, but from surrendering to his will and allowing him to transform our hearts.
It's a profound shift in perspective, isn't it?
Yeah.
To see our struggles not as punishments, but as opportunities for growth and transformation.
Exactly. And it's about focusing on the love and grace that are always available to us, even when we don't understand the reasons for our pain.
It's like choosing to see the bigger picture, trusting that even when things seem dark and hopeless, there's a light guiding us towards a brighter future.
And sometimes that light shines most brightly through the darkest of experiences. Take Mary Thomas, for instance. She went through a devastating loss that really shook her faith. But as she leaned into her grief and allowed herself to be vulnerable before God, she found a new level of strength and a resilience.
It's a reminder that we're never truly alone in our pain, and that even in the midst of suffering, there's a love that can carry us through.
It's about surrendering to that love, letting go of our need to control, and allowing ourselves to be held and comforted.
And sometimes that comfort comes through a still, small voice within, whispering words of hope and reminding us that we are loved.
As we continue our journey through this book, We encounter stories that highlight the intricate interplay of faith, choice, and the consequences of our actions.
One that comes to mind is the story of Carolyn, who struggled with a tobacco addiction. She really wanted to quit, and she prayed fervently for help. But she found it really difficult to overcome the habit.
What was interesting about her story is that she and her pastor, they realized that her perception of smoking had been subtly influenced by all the images of smoking she saw on television. Like it had normalized the habit in her mind, even though she knew it was harmful.
It makes you think about how our environment and the media we consume can shape our choices, even without us realizing it.
Right. It's about being mindful of those influences and making conscious choices that align with our values and our desire for wholeness.
And sometimes that means creating space for the divine to work in our lives by removing those obstacles that block the flow of grace and healing.
Absolutely. Now, the book takes us beyond cultural boundaries, demonstrating that faith and prayer are universal experiences. There's this incredible story about Jai Ram, a devout Christian living in a remote village in India.
Oh, I loved his story. His faith was so inspiring.
It really was. His journey began with a simple but profound desire to have a teacher come to his village and share the teachings of Jesus with his community.
And he prayed for this for years, right?
5 years, to be exact.
Yeah.
But he never gave up hope. And finally, his prayers were answered. A mission school teacher arrived in his village, bringing the knowledge and inspiration that Jai Ram had so longed for.
It's amazing how persistent prayer can bring about such remarkable results, even if it takes years for those results to manifest.
And Jai Ram's story is full of other incredible examples of answered prayer. Like when the mission school teacher's wife became critically ill with a high fever, Jai Ram insisted they pray for her and anoint her with oil, believing God would heal her.
And what happened?
She was healed instantly, her fever broke, and she made a full recovery.
It's a testament to the power of faith and the belief in the impossible.
But perhaps the most extraordinary story about Jai Ram is the one about his buffalo. It suddenly died, which was a devastating loss for his family, as the buffalo provided milk for them.
Oh no, that's terrible. What did they do?
Well, with unwavering faith, Jai Ram called upon the mission school teacher to pray for the buffalo and anoint it with oil, just as they had done for the teacher's wife.
Wait, are you saying what I think you're saying? Did the buffalo come back to life?
Yes. To everyone's astonishment, the buffalo was resurrected. It's a story that challenges our understanding of what's possible and invites us to consider the boundless power of faith.
It's a reminder that even in the face of seemingly impossible situations, there's a force greater than ourselves that can intervene and bring about miraculous results.
Jai Ram's story is a beacon of hope, reminding us that no matter where we come from or what challenges we face, we can all tap into a source of strength and guidance that transcends our limited understanding.
It's about opening our hearts to the possibility of the miraculous, believing that even in the darkest of nights, there's a light that can guide us towards a brighter future.
And it's about embracing the power of prayer, not as a means to control and manipulate, but as a way to surrender to a love that can heal, redeem, and ultimately transform our lives.
As we move towards the final chapter of our deep dive, we'll encounter stories that invite us to reflect on the nature of divine guidance, the importance of humility, and the transformative power of confession and repentance.
These themes are beautifully illustrated in the story of the prophet Daniel, who received a profound vision from God. But it's important to note that this vision came only after Daniel humbled himself and acknowledged his own shortcomings.
His story highlights the importance of aligning ourselves with divine principles if we want to gain spiritual insight. And often that alignment comes through humility and a willingness to recognize our own imperfections.
It's about letting go of our ego and our need to be right and approaching prayer with a heart of surrender. It's about seeking guidance and wisdom rather than trying to impose our own will.
And Daniel's story also underscores the importance of confession and repentance as pathways to healing and restoration.
It's about acknowledging our mistakes, taking responsibility for our actions, and seeking forgiveness. Not only from God, but also from those we may have harmed.
It's about confronting those hidden parts of ourselves that we might prefer to keep buried and allowing the light of truth to shine on them.
It's about embracing grace and allowing ourselves to be made whole, not through our own efforts, but through the unconditional love and forgiveness of a power greater than ourselves.
These stories are so inspiring. They really make you think about how prayer can impact our own lives.
They invite us to reconsider our beliefs about the boundaries of prayer and the limitless potential of faith. They challenge our understanding of what's possible and encourage us to open our minds to new ways of seeing the world.
One of the most beautiful things about this book is that it inspires a sense of wonder and possibility.
Exactly. Now, as we delve into the final chapters, we'll encounter stories that challenge our notions of what's possible and invite us to reconsider the boundaries of prayer and the limitless potential of faith. We'll explore Elaine's struggle with a complicated relationship and Jim Crawley's story, which invites us to think deeply about judgment and forgiveness.
I can't wait to hear more. Welcome back to the Deep Dive. We're wrapping up our exploration of foolish prayers, fabulous answers, and I'm so excited to dive into these final stories. They really highlight, how these accounts weave together extraordinary events with things that we all go through as humans.
Yeah, that's a good point. We've heard stories about healing and deliverance, guidance, provision, even a resurrection. But at their core, they all speak to, the struggles we face, the doubts that we wrestle with, our desire for connection and meaning, that kind of thing.
Exactly. And as we get into these last few chapters, the stories, well, they encourage us to think about divine guidance and the importance of humility and the power of confession and repentance.
One story that really embodies those themes is the one about the prophet Daniel. He received this incredible vision from God, but it's important to remember that this vision came after he humbled himself. He acknowledged his own shortcomings.
His story shows us that it's really crucial to align ourselves with divine principles if we want to gain spiritual insight. And that alignment often comes through, well, being humble, being willing to recognize our own imperfections.
It's about letting go of the ego, that need to be right all the time, and approaching prayer with a heart of surrender, seeking guidance and wisdom instead of just trying to impose our own will.
And Daniel's story also shows us how powerful confession and repentance can be. They are pathways to healing and restoration.
It's about owning up to our mistakes, taking responsibility for our actions, and seeking forgiveness, not just from God, but also from the people we might have hurt.
It's about confronting those parts of ourselves that we might want to keep hidden, allowing truth to shine a light on them.
It's about accepting grace and allowing ourselves to be made whole, and not through our own efforts, but through the unconditional love and forgiveness that comes from a power greater than ourselves.
Okay, so let's move on to these final stories. These are the ones that challenge our ideas of what's possible. They make us reconsider what prayer can do, the power of faith.
Okay.
One that really stuck with me was Elaine's story. Remember, she was in that complicated relationship with a married doctor, and it was really destructive. She was struggling to break free.
Right.
She turned to prayer for guidance and strength, but she didn't stop there. She also reached out to her church community for support. They help her work through her emotions and make some tough choices.
It sounds like she realized that she needed help to get through this. Sometimes we can't do these things alone, especially those really tough situations.
Absolutely. And in the end, she decided to move to a different state to get away from the doctor. It was a huge step in her healing.
It seems like her prayer and her own actions and the support from her community all came together to help her get out of this pattern that was hurting her.
It wasn't easy for her, but it shows how prayer can give us the strength to make changes. It's not always a quick fix, It's a journey, a transformation.
It reminds us that sometimes we have to take action, make hard choices, and ask for help from others. That's part of it, too.
Okay, so let's switch gears a bit and talk about Jim Crawley, the church deacon. His story raises some really interesting questions about judgment and forgiveness. He was really judgmental, always criticizing others. But then the pastor, he had this dream. And in the dream, he saw Jim secretly smoking, which was weird because Jim always preached against smoking.
Oh, wow. It's like the dream was revealing something about Jim, something he was hiding.
Exactly. And the craziest part is, the dream was true. When the pastor talked to Jim about it, Jim confessed that he'd been smoking in secret for 40 years.
Wow, that's a long time to keep something like that hidden. It's a reminder that sometimes what we see on the outside doesn't match what's going on inside, and that we shouldn't be so quick to judge because we never really know what people are going through.
Yeah. We all have our flaws and weaknesses. Trying to act perfect doesn't help anyone.
It's about understanding that we're all on a journey, and we all make mistakes. And it's important to offer forgiveness to others and to ourselves.
Forgiveness is so important. It can really free us from guilt and shame, and we can move forward with a lighter heart.
It's about giving ourselves the same grace that we hope to receive from others.
Okay, so let's talk about one last story. This one's about a young boy named Sonny Fox. It's all about the power of childlike faith.
Oh, I love stories about kids and their faith. It's so pure and innocent.
Right. So Sonny, he prayed for a dog, and he was absolutely certain that Jesus would give him one. He told everyone, Jesus promised me a dog.
That's so sweet. Kids just have this incredible ability to believe without a doubt.
And guess what? He did get a dog. But that's not even the most amazing part. Later on, his father got very sick, like really sick. And Sonny prayed for his dad to get better. He prayed with the same unwavering faith that he had when he prayed for a dog.
Oh, wow. What happened?
Well, the doctors, they actually said his dad was dead. But then something unbelievable happened. Sonny's dad started breathing again, and he made a full recovery.
That's incredible. It's like Sonny's pure faith, his unwavering belief, made a miracle happen.
What if we could all approach prayer like that, with that same level of trust and expectation?
It's a beautiful reminder that sometimes the simplest prayers, the ones that come from a pure heart, are the most powerful.
So we've come to the end of our exploration of foolish prayers, fabulous answers. It's been an amazing journey hearing all these stories of healing and deliverance, guidance, provision, and even resurrection.
These stories remind us that prayer is a multifaceted thing, and when we open ourselves to something larger than ourselves, amazing things can happen.
We might not always understand how our prayers are answered or when, but these stories encourage us to have faith, to know that we're never really alone, and that there's a force in the universe that wants what's best for us.
It's about accepting the mystery, knowing that we don't have all the answers, and trusting that there's a divine plan, even if we can't fully grasp it right now.
One thing that these stories make very clear is that prayer isn't about manipulating the universe or bending it to our will.
It's about nurturing a connection to something that's loving and wise and strong, something that can support us and guide us on our journey.
It's about aligning ourselves with a higher power and opening ourselves to a level of support that we might not be able to fully understand.
We've heard from people from all walks of life, facing all kinds of challenges, but what unites them is their belief in prayer.
It reminds us that faith is a universal human experience. It's about seeking connection, finding meaning, and discovering a strength that goes beyond what we can physically see or touch.
Some people might say these are just coincidences, but the thing that ties all these stories together is this unwavering belief in something bigger than themselves.
Something that can heal and mend and guide.
Something that can move mountains, both literally and figuratively.
Something that's available to all of us if we just dare to believe and open our hearts.
So, as we wrap up this deep dive, what sticks with you the most? What sparks your curiosity? What makes you want to explore prayer in your own life?
Maybe you're facing a challenge that seems impossible to overcome. Or maybe there's something you really want, a desire in your heart.
Maybe you've already experienced something amazing, or maybe you're just curious about what might happen if you open yourself to something bigger than yourself.
Wherever you are on your journey, approach prayer with an open mind, a willing heart, and a sense of wonder.
You might be surprised by the answers you receive, the changes that occur.
Remember, faith isn't about having all the answers. It's about being willing to ask questions, to seek guidance, and to trust that there's a plan, even if we don't fully understand it yet.
Keep exploring, keep believing, keep praying. You never know what miracles are waiting to be discovered.